Hiya everyone and welcome to my channel. If you like what you see and hear today, please let us know in the comments and please subscribe so you can keep up to date with my videos and stay here and check them out. Now let's get into the video, and today we're going to be talking about 5 of some of the biggest mysteries in the world. Number 5. The Stone Spheres of Costa Rica. If you've never heard of these before, they're the most random polished stone orbs that appear to have a huge mystery behind them. Absolutely nobody knows what they were used for or why they were even made in the first place. Not only do these date back possibly to 200 BC and the 1600 CE, but the human technology to make such perfected round sculptures is still blowing the minds of scientists today. It would take an excellent mathematics mind to work out the precise detailing of the measurements, but also the handiwork would require someone with strength, stamina, and would need to be excellent in that field. The inhabitants of Costa Rica at that time had no written language, which questions as to how they managed to have such acute math skills. Although there have been conflicting arguments online about the weight and size of the orbs, scientists have confirmed they all range in size, from just a few centimetres to over 2 metres in diameter, and their weight ranging from all kinds of weights, but the largest one up until now is weighing 16 tonnes. Some suggest alien intelligence, saying that the Costa Ricans had visits from extraterrestrial beings and possibly also ancient civilizations. Scientists immediately ruled out speculations, but if you believe in the possibility of other life beyond our planet, this one would be a good one, a pick to pieces and linked to possible extraterrestrial beings being part of the mystery. Because of the precision of these orbs, the height and diameter, and the mathematic minds behind them, it does really make you speculate more so, due to the understanding of it, but with limited equipment, education and language. You might recognise the stone balls from Indiana Jones' Raiders of the Lost Ark, as this is where it sparked population. I wonder if the creator of Indiana Jones took an interest in the real mystery behind these orbs too, like most of us today, including scientists who are scratching their heads at the possible reasons that why these were ever made. Upon looking more and more about orbs online, I came across a lot of different forums and came across the man who can move any stone. He actually rebuilt Stonehenge to prove to us that human beings are more than capable given the right structure to the movements of large objects. I'm going to link his YouTube down below, and this does put a lot into perspective, and I think that due to the past civilizations being so limited with their language, skills and simple education that we take mostly for granted these days, I imagine it would be similar to losing one of our 5 senses, and with their limitations to outside distractions, they had no other choice but to be stronger and to use their mind to full capacity. To put a label on it, I suppose you could say that they were the geniuses of today's world. Number 4. Oak Island and the Money Pit. I was speculating about whether or not to include this today, but I decided to, because it's a huge mystery as to why it's been happening, and what intrigued us the most was the mysterious cipher stone, but we'll get into that later. Oak Island is a 140-acre island in Lunenburg County on the south shore of Nova Scotia in Canada. It's a tree-covered island, and it's about one of 360 small islands in Mahone Bay, and rises to a maximum of 35 feet, which is 11 metres above sea level. Located 200 metres from shore and connected to the mainland by a modern causeway, the island is privately owned, and advance permission is required for any visitation. Oak Island is noted as the location of the Mystery Money Pit and the site of over 200 years of treasure hunting. Many people argue that the Money Pit is just simply a sinkhole. There are lots of critics around this topic who don't believe there's any fortune to be found or discovered here, and that the probable cause is just natural phenomenon. Repeated excavations have reported layers of apparently man-made artefacts as deep as 31 metres, but ended in collapsed excavations and flooding. There's been multiple speculation among enthusiasts as to who originally dug the pit and what it might contain. The earliest accounts of research into the pit say they found marks of some type, whereas later accounts say that oak platforms were discovered every 10 feet, which is 3 meters. One expedition said they found the flood tunnel at 90 feet and that it was lined with flat stones. However, Robert Dunfield, who was a trained geologist, wrote that he carefully examined the walls of the re-excavated pit and was unable to locate any evidence of this tunnel. Back to the cipher, which was supposed to have been originally seen in the 20th century, although exact dates are a topic of controversy, which the researcher translated. Apparently, some accounts state that he used it as a fireback in his fireplace, while others claim it was last seen in a doorstep in the Halifax bookbinder's shop. In the 1970s, the script was sent to a man named Berry Fell, an author of the controversial books America BC and Saga America. He concluded that the symbols were similar to the Coptic alphabet, and when translated implied that the people needed to remember their god, or else they would perish. One thing that does spark attention to the surrounding mystery of the treasure is the fact that man-made structures do exist under Oak Island. It has been discussed in many books, including a book written by Lee Lamb, daughter of Robert Restall. But whether these structures were constructed by people hiding a treasure or are the remains of prior excavation camps is unknown. This is a mystery that has been unsolved for years and still continues to be. I personally like to believe there are facts behind mysteries, and my mind tells me there is definitely some treasure down there. Now let's get into number 3, Forzo, the mysterious fishing boat. Most articles online are all in Spanish, so to find something outlining the whole mystery is really hard to find. The story is confusing, extremely questionable, and very mysterious, so let's get into it. So let's start with the Forzo and her crew. It was a fishing boat with home in Tazacorte, La Palma Island, which is in the Canary Islands. She was a rather large fishing boat for her category, so her services were requested not only for fishing purposes, but she was often employed for the transportation of fruits, vegetables, diesel, and other similar kinds of goods across the archipelago. She was a good ship and had earned a reputation of durability. She was equipped with a 43 horsepower Lister engine and had a top speed of 13 km per hour. In 1948, Rafael Acosta was her owner, who for a long time had employed the brothers Ramon and Eliberto Hernandez along with their cousins Miguel and Viterbo Acosta as the Forzo's crew. They were all experienced sailors and fishermen, having been in the trade since their teenage years, and Rafael was very confident in their skills. On July 20th, the Forzo left Tazacorte port, heading to El Hierro Island, south of La Palma. Roberto was not on board that day due to agreeing to take responsibility for some of the official acts as part of a festival that would be carried on in his hometown of Tazacorte. 7 hours later, the Forzo made her arrival on the frontier at the northern shore of El Hierro, where Ramon, Eliberto and Miguel unloaded the cargo. That night, a fellow native of Tazacorte was in Frontera too. That day, he had got a call from his wife and their 2-month-old daughter was severely ill, and the doctor had prescribed her some antibiotic shots. He tried to board the La Palma as soon as possible, but he missed it by just a few minutes. The next one would not board for another 48 hours, and so he spots the Forzo, and out of desperation he talks to the crew about his situation and asks them if he can join them on the way back to La Palma so he could reunite with his wife and sick baby. Julio offered to pay them for the ride back, but they rejected the money and took him back free of charge. After this, the Forzo left to go to La Palma at 2:30 am on July 21st, 1968. But none of the 4 men would set foot on land ever again. On July 21st, early hours of the morning, something goes wrong on their journey. The Forstall's crew had covered that route endless times, adding all kinds of weather conditions with no significant problem of any kind. That night, the sea was calm. Other fishermen would later report that a light mist had arose in the area that early morning, reducing visibility and making harder for the Forstall's crew to spot the La Palma's huge mountains in the distance when the sun arose. However, those who knew the crew, including Raphael, had no doubt that the men were fully capable of navigating in those conditions. The Forstall was expected to arrive at 10 a.m. on the shore of Tazacorte that day, although she never made it. Hoping to calm down the families of the 4 men, Raphael ordered another of his employees to sail to the Tazacorte, to the Frontera. Basically, they did the Forstall's planned route backwards in the hope of finding her and figuring out what had happened. The employee radioed a report from the waters that they had not seen the Forstall at any moment across the route, not even any trace of her. Up until now, they were sincerely hoping that the Forstall had just come to some kind of mechanical problems with the boat and maybe she was floating adrift somewhere close to their route. Raphael trusted the men and their experience and capabilities, so he at this point expected that something more serious was going on. He contacted the authorities and the SAR team, and on the 22nd of July, the search for the Forstall and the sailors begins. An emergency message was radioed to all ships that could have been around the area. The Forstall was now officially missing at sea. A Casa 2.111 bomber took off and searched in good weather conditions, no clouds and excellent visibility, and unfortunately the plane crew came back empty-handed. Nothing at this point had spotted the ship. They now started to collect information and decided that they were now looking for a sunken ship and possibly 4 dead sailors. Now, this is where it suddenly gets more weird. On July 25th, a British refer ship had spotted a small fishing boat that seemed adrift in the ocean, way off the Forstall's original route. 190 kilometres west of La Palma, they were using a flashlight to signal their position, and shortly after, they confirmed that the mysterious boat was the Forstall. Ramon, Eliberto, Miguel and Julio were alive. They were dehydrated, hungry, sunburned and agitated, but they were alive. The good news spread across La Palma, and not only La Palma, but across the whole archipelago. Finally, it seemed there would be a happy ending. After giving the sailors food, water and cigarettes, they offered to tow them back to La Palma, and hugely unexpected for everyone, at this point, things took a strange turn. The 4 members of the Forstall's crew rejected the offer to being towed back. Instead, they asked to be given enough food and fuel to make it back to La Palma by themselves. When asked what kind of mechanical breakdown or failure they had experienced, they replied that their boat was fine and nothing was out of the ordinary. Strange. The crew said their goodbyes and they parted for an 18-hour sail ahead with the generous amount of food supply and water for the trip. The British ship watched the Forstall as she parted back to the archipelago and radioed to Tazacorte an estimated arrival of 7 o'clock of that same day, July 25th. Back in Tazacorte, there was an overwhelming atmosphere of joy and relief. By 8, the whole town had gathered at the port waiting for the Forstall's return. There was huge celebrations, wine opened, and the 4 men's families being the centre of attention as they could barely wait to see their loved ones, staring into the ocean's horizon with happiness. At 7 p.m, the Forstall did not return. Everyone in the docks encouraged the crew's family members not to despair, and they were assured that they would probably arrive soon. But hours passed and the night came, and there was no ship coming from the horizon. The wives and children of the sailors stayed on the docks, where they would spend most of the night waiting for a boat that would never come back, before giving up to the harsh reality that the Forstall was missing at sea, again. On July 26, the search continues. Early in the morning, not one Casa 2.111 plane took off, but 4 did. At the time, the search for the Forstall became the largest search for a missing person in Spain's history, costing over 1 million pesetas, which would equate to approximately 2.26 million current US dollars. This was over a few days. After the efforts put into the search, unfortunately nothing happened and nobody was found. The boat was still lost. Forster was nowhere to be found in the ocean, and now the mystery had grown even further. The Forster was again lost at sea. On the 7th of August, they called off the search. On October 9, 1968, the Ana Diego finds something in the ocean. 2 months had passed and people had started to move on. Society was just getting back to normal. The boat had become a thing of the past. But at some point in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the Italian merchant ship was en route to Venezuela. It was a dark, cloudy morning, but besides that, the conditions were good. Everything was normal when suddenly they spotted something ahead of them, and upon closer inspection, they realised that they were looking at a small fishing boat, the kind that is not apt for cross-oceanic sailing. The boat seemed adrift with nobody at the wheel, but they could see her call sign clearly on the hull. Her name was Forster. They stopped next to the boat, and the first mate with the deck sailor got on board the abandoned ship. No one was at the deck of the cabin, and on the good condition of the boat, it looked like her crew had just vanished without any trace. Gascoigne found no signs of violence or damage to the ship. He could not find any logbook aboard that could have explained what had happened. So far, the Forster ship looked like a perfectly seaworthy ship that somehow had ended up in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with no one on board. That was all the Forster looked like until he opened the hatch on the deck that led into the engine room and climbed down inside. There was a dead man facing up on the floor next to the ship's engine. He was naked, and a transistor radio was also found next to him. The man had clearly died much earlier, and, probably due to particular conditions of the oceanic environment, his body was also mummified to a degree. Alarmed, Gascoigne commanded the deck sailor to come back to the Ana de Mayo and have the radio operators send a message notifying the spooky discovery. Meanwhile, he inspected the engine room thoroughly, trying to get a clue of what could have happened. He found a small notebook, and he thought it may have belonged to the dead man, but upon opening it, the first thing that caught Gascoigne's attention was the fact that a good number of pages had been removed. Eventually, it would be determined that 28 pages were missing from the notebook. From the remaining pages, the first ones had a set of numbers, just a set of quick, simple calculations, and some notes in Spanish. The last one with some content on it was the page that immediately followed the last one that had been removed. It contained a much more elaborated text that Gascoigne could not fully understand, and he could notice nevertheless that it was some kind of farewell. Gascoigne eventually returned back to the Ana de Mayo with the notebook and the very few documents found in the cabin, which was mostly insurance documents. After 5 hours from the encounter, the Spanish authorities were already aware of the discovery, so were the inhabitants of La Palma. It seemed that once the mysterious body arrived back to Spain for further examination, at least they would get some answers. The Ana de Mayo had informed their intention to tow the Forster with them on the way to Puerto Cabello, Venezuela. They also promised to send to Spain an envelope with some documents that were found abroad. For some reason, they didn't mention the notebook until later. Weird. On October 11th at 6:30 a.m., a telegram from the Ana de Mayo. After only less than 2 days from the Forster's reappearance and subsequent decision to tow it back to Venezuela, the Spanish authorities receive a telegram from the Ana de Mayo. The message is gobsmacking, to say the least. They inform that while being towed, the Forster had sunk both first during the night, ripping and dragging the towing cable with it. The dead body was still on the Forster, therefore it was gone with the boat and could not be retrieved. All that was left was the 28 pages of documents. Eventually the notebook made it back to La Palma, where it was shown to the families. Julio's wife recognised it as her husband's notebook, which he used to write his personal notes and payments. The notebook was soon investigated, and the last page contained a goodbye from Julio to his wife, in which he says how to proceed with the insurances he had prayed for, and how to sell his properties so she would not find herself with no money after his death. The text ended as if follows. Don't ever tell their 5-year-old son name all that has happened to me. You know that God wanted this fate for me. Love you. His wife kept the note for years, and as of 2013 she was still alive and had never remarried. The thing that stands out the most was that it started abruptly and it didn't have much context to it. And let's not forget that Julio was completely aware of his death. Along with the missing pages, it led investigators to believe that he had documented the series of events that led to his mysterious fate. Of course, there's a lot of questions to be asked about this story. Number one is, what happened to the rest of the Forstow's crew? What was written in those 28 pages? Who removed the pages and why? Why did they refuse to be towed back to La Palma by the DeQuesta? When they first disappeared, why didn't they offer any explanation as to what had happened to them? This story was extremely interesting and it really got us thinking, and I really did find it kind of creepy. Let us know what you guys think in the comments, and have you read any further documents about this? Number 2. Who put Bella in the witch elm? Every time I read or hear about this and look at the photos, it really does give us this uneasy feeling straight away. The mystery first begins in 1942 in a small village named Hagley in Worcestershire, in England. 4 young boys were out and about for the day, poaching for bird eggs in the local Hagley woods. At some point, one of them decided to climb a tree, which was a wych elm tree, to hunt for a bird's nest. However, whilst looking for the bird's nest, they found something else in replacement for that: a human skull. The human skull was placed inside a hollow section of the trunk. After returning home and informing their parents, the police get involved. When the police arrive at the area and search the rest of the trunk, they find an almost complete skeleton with a shoe, a gold wedding ring and some fragments of clothing. The skull still had some tufts of hair and a clear dental pattern despite some missing teeth. A hand was also found some distance from the rest of the body. A pathologist did an examination and these were his findings. The skull belonged to a female. She'd been dead about 18 months, which placed her death before October 1941. A section of taffeta was found in her mouth, suggesting that she had died from suffocation. Her jaw was to be very irregular, which should have made her identity easy to find. However, after trawling through dental and medical records, they couldn't find any clear identity. Rumours started, and many spreading that she was used as a sacrifice and the death related to black magic because of the hand being separated and enclosing her body being in a tree. Police were at a dead end, and on top of that, World War II was going on and they were limited to resources. But this is where it gets even weirder. In 1944, a graffiti message appeared on a wall in Upper Dean Street in Birmingham. The message read, "Who put Bella down the wych elm, Hagley Wood?" This was obviously in reference to the murder. It has the village name, the tree she was found in, and now a name. After this discovery, the investigation sets off again, and police are trying to find anyone missing named Bella. They would find nothing, and still to this present day, her identity is left unknown. Here is a reconstructed photo of Bella for you that I'm just going to put on the screen. That wasn't the end though. The graffiti kept on appearing. Who put Bella in the wych elm? It appears on a lot of surfaces across the West Midlands area, most commonly on the Hagley or Balsk, which was near the original crime scene. The graffiti continued all the way up to 1999, and since then it has not been spotted. This whole story just gives me the chills, and it almost makes me want to get on board with digging information. When I did that, I found a whole page dedicated to possible outcomes of what had happened to the mysterious woman found in the wych elm tree, or as the graffiti artist likes to call her, Bella. One thing I did find suspicious was the fact that her original skull and autopsy report had been lost by the police. Although with the World War going on, I suppose that could have something to do with it. Luckily, they reconstructed her face before that happened, so we can have an idea of what Bella might have looked like. But what do you guys think happened here? Some people suggest that she was a spy, and some have discovered a missing person report named Bella, who had disappeared 3 years previously before the body was found, and also the confession of a man named Jack Mawson. If only Bella could tell us what happened that night. There's a lot of questions that we can all ask, and I'm sure that some of you now are asking the questions in your head as to who did actually put Bella in the witch elm, and how did they know that part of the tree they put her body was in was hollow? Was there a tree inspector involved? And did the body make the trunk hollow from rotting? Was she placed there before the tree turned hollow? Honestly, the tree is an odd looking tree, even for a witch elm, which makes you question if someone knew about it and knew to put her there out of sight. Number 1. Oliver Lavassier's cryptogram. Oliver Lavassier was a French pirate nicknamed Le Bouche, which means the buzzard, or la bouche, the mouth. He was born in or around 1688 and died on the 7th of July 1730. His crazy nicknames come from his early days for the speed and ruthlessness with which he always attacked his enemies, as well as his ability to verbally attack his opponents. He is known for allegedly hiding one of the biggest treasures in pirate history, estimated at over £1 billion, and leaving behind the most mysterious cryptogram with clues to its whereabouts that has sparked the investigative minds of many people to this day. Lavassier was born into a wealthy family and became an architect after receiving an excellent education. But during the War of the Spanish Succession, he procured a letter of marque from King Louis XIV and became a pirateer for the French crown. When the war ended, he was ordered to return home with his ship, but he instead joined the pirate company of Benjamin Hornigold in 1716. Although he had a scar across one eye limiting his sight, he proved himself a good leader and shipmate. After a year of successful looting, the Hornigold party split, Lavassier partnering briefly with Samuel Bellamy before deciding to try his luck on the Brazilian coast aboard a stolen 22-gun merchant frigate named La Louise. He attacked many boats and ships on the way to the south of Brazil, most notably a slave ship coming from Angola, whose crew was abandoned to sink their ship after it was robbed and damaged. He then abandoned 240 stolen slabs on an island off Macaé before a Portuguese armed boat gave him chase. After fights with the Portuguese where 10 pirates were killed, La Louise took shelter in Canea for some days. There, Lavassier was informed of a rich French merchantman in the nearby bay of Panaguana. While given a chase, La Louise was caught in a storm off Contiga Island and sank in 1718, with the death of about 80 of its crew. Lavassier escaped on a small brigantine that escorted his ship, and from there went south to San Francisco de Sul, where he robbed a boat full of cassava flour, in order to feed his surviving crew, sailing back to Canaya. The pirates then sailed further north, preying on ships again. Lavassier later reappeared in the Caribbean of June that year in a smaller vessel that he had managed to steal on his way back from Brazil, but was almost captured by HMS Scarborough under the command of Captain Hume, and fled with much of his valuables to the Caribbean area in a smaller sloop. After joining and leaving groups of pirates and performing raids, stealing valuables, and being a major leader. By this point his eye was completely blind, and he started wearing an eye patch. Lavoisier conducted many exploits, including the capture of the Portuguese Greater Leon, which consisted of them getting bars of gold and silver, dozens of boxes of golden guineas, diamonds, pearls, silk, art and religious objects from the Sea Cathedral in Goa. When the loot was divided, each pirate received at least £50,000 worth of golden guineas, as well as 42 diamonds each. When one of his shipmates died on their sail to Madagascar, Lavoisier and his remaining shipmate split his treasures between them two. In 1724, after Lavoisier avoided the French government's amnesty that had been offered to all pirates in the Indian Ocean who would give up piracy, he went into secret hiding and settled down for a while. Lavoisier was eventually captured near Fort Dauphin in Madagascar, where he was taken to St. Denis, Reunion and hanged for piracy at 5 p.m. on the 7th of July 1730. Now this is where the treasure comes in. Legend tells that Lavoisier wore a necklace on the scaffolding where he was placed to be hanged. He then threw his necklace into the crowd, declaring, "Find my treasure, the one who may understand it." The necklace has since been lost, but treasure hunters have since tried to decode the cryptogram, hoping its solution will lead to treasure. In 1974, Englishman Reginald Cruz Wilkins studied the documents, but the cryptogram was much more difficult to solve than first believed. Cruz Wilkins' early writing indicates that the code may be based on Masonic symbolism. Cruz Wilkins claimed to have discovered a connection with the zodiac, the clavicles of Solomon, and the 12 labours of Hercules. Various tests representing the labours of Hercules had to be undertaken in strict order. The treasure chamber is somewhere underground and must be approached carefully to avoid being flooded. It's protected by the tides, which requires damming to hold them back, and is to be approached from the north. Until his death at Reunion, Cruz sought and dug the island of Mahi. In a cave, except for old guns, some coins, and a pirate's sarcophagi, he did not find anything. He died in 1977 before he broke the last piece of the mysterious code, and his son John is still currently seeking the treasure, concluding that after using state-of-the-art equipment, he needs to go back to the old method and get into this guy's mind. He says he is 10 down and 2 to go in his Herculean labours. This is the end of the mystery, and thus it leaves us all scratching our heads. This one really got to me, and I sat and I tried to figure it out myself at one point, looking around on Google Maps where they say the treasure's hiding, but as well as that, to see others wanting to discover it so much as well just made us think. Imagine if millions of people did put their heads together to try and solve it. Do you think we'd ever find the treasure? Is Lavoisier laughing from his grave at us all? For now, that still remains one of the biggest mysteries in the world. And with that comes the end of my first ever video on YouTube. I just want to thank you for staying if you have till the end, and thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to see more videos, and like and comment, and let's all take a crack at solving the mysteries of the universe together.